Chosen one. There is something inside you that remains unfinished, not because you lacked discipline or failed to try hard enough. The truth is quieter than that. The work you came here to bring into the world has been waiting patiently while you poured your energy, attention, and devotion into everything around it. You have shown up for people when they needed you. You carried responsibilities that were never truly yours and kept giving even when your own strength was running low. There were nights when you answered one more message, solved one more problem, and postponed the conversation your own life was trying to have with you. Through it all, the work that belongs to you has remained there, waiting. Maybe that moment is closer than you think. There is a kind of exhaustion that has little to do with failure. It comes from spending years investing your heart in places you were never meant to stay. You finish one thing, move to the next, and still a quiet question follows you. Is this really it? That question appears in quiet mornings, long drives, and the spaces between responsibilities. It does not arrive dramatically, it arrives honestly. If it keeps returning, there is a reason. That question is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It may be evidence that something important is trying to reach you. What belongs to you rarely shouts. It returns patiently, waiting for the moment you become still enough to listen. And there are signs. Most people explain them away because acknowledging them would require movement. It would require becoming someone new. So the signs retreat beneath the surface and wait. Maybe you have started many things but struggled to give your whole heart to any of them. Maybe you called it inconsistency or lack of focus. But what if something deeper has been happening? What if part of you has been resisting a life built around everything except the work you were meant to do? There is a kind of completion that feels different from ordinary accomplishment. It leaves you both emptied and fulfilled at the same time. That feeling belongs to the work that was meant for you. Trying to pour that energy somewhere else is like asking a river to flow uphill. You can force it for a while. You can strain and push harder. Yet eventually the current reveals where it was always meant to go. Perhaps that is what your exhaustion has been trying to tell you. There is another feeling that often appears in this season: guilt. Someone asks for your help, and before the words arrive, you already know the honest answer. Yet the no gets stuck somewhere between your heart and your voice, and what comes out instead is yes. Somewhere along the way, you learned that purpose meant constant availability. You learned that faithfulness meant saying yes to everyone, and that service meant giving until there was nothing left. But what if that lesson is incomplete? What if every yes to what is not yours has quietly become a no to what is? Sit with that for a moment. What if the most sacred thing available to you right now is not taking on something new, but finally completing what has been waiting for years? You can feel the shift already. Places that once energized you feel different now. Invitations that once felt exciting sometimes feel like interruptions. Not because you care less, but because something deeper is asking for your attention. A narrowing is taking place, a gathering of energy, a quiet movement toward the center of what you were built for. Life itself seems to be pointing in one direction, and that direction is becoming harder to ignore. Then come the quiet hours. A thought returns, an idea, a vision, a piece of work you have circled for years. Maybe there is an old notebook somewhere holding an earlier version of it, or a dream you have quietly restarted more than once. You imagine what would happen if you finally gave yourself fully to it. Then the familiar voices arrive. Not yet. You need more time, more certainty, better conditions. And so you walk away again. Yet somehow it always returns. The pull grows stronger, the image becomes clearer, the weight of it increases rather than fades. If you are honest, there is a part of you that already knows. The question was never what it is. The question has always been whether you would allow yourself to become the person who carries it. Sometimes what looks like procrastination is something deeper. Sometimes it is grief. Grief for the life that ends when you stop postponing who you are becoming. Grief for the familiar version of yourself that can no longer go where you are being called. The wilderness was never punishment, it was preparation. Those long seasons where you kept moving but never felt like you arrived were shaping something essential. Nothing was wasted. Every delay, disappointment, and season of waiting was building something in hidden places. And now, perhaps for the first time, you can feel it. Something in you is growing tired of postponing what it has always known. Something in you is done circling the doorway. Not because every fear has disappeared, and not because every question has been answered. It is because a deeper part of you has realized that the cost of remaining unfinished has become greater than the cost of beginning. These seasons were never proof that you had been forgotten. They were never evidence that you missed your moment or fell short of what was meant for you. What you have been living through may be the very process that prepares a person to carry what they were always meant to carry. No one places a surgeon into an operating room before years of training shape steady hands. No one builds a cathedral without first laying a foundation strong enough to bear the weight. The years that felt invisible were not empty years. They were years of construction. While nothing seemed to be happening on the surface, something essential was being built where few people could see it. Think about Moses. 40 years passed before the moment most people remember. 40 years before the fire on the mountain and before the assignment was spoken aloud. I sometimes wonder what those years felt like, whether he questioned the fire he carried inside as a young man, whether he wondered if the sense that his life was meant for something more would ever become something real. Yet those years did not create a diminished man, they created a prepared one. The wilderness stripped away every plan that belonged to his own ambition and loosened his grip on every future that was not truly his. When the moment finally came, he was not searching for purpose. He was recognizing something that had been living inside him all along. The assignment had not changed. He had. Maybe something similar has been happening in you. Every relationship that stretched your heart taught you deeper compassion. Every season of being misunderstood taught you how to remain rooted without applause. Every disappointment sharpened a discernment comfort could never teach. Those experiences were not random. They were building capacity. There are qualities you carry today that an earlier version of you could not have held. Patience, empathy, and the ability to trust an inner knowing were all forged through seasons you once wished would end. Every closed door carries a similar story. Some of them hurt deeply when they shut. Yet looking back, can you see how some of those rooms would have consumed you before you were ready for what was waiting beyond them? What felt like rejection was often protection. What felt like an ending was often redirection. What felt like loss was frequently preparation wearing unfamiliar clothes. And now something is changing. Maybe you cannot fully explain it yet. Maybe you do not have language for it. But somewhere beneath the surface, something feels different. The season is turning. Not with fireworks or dramatic signs. Most genuine transitions happen quietly. One day, a certainty simply arrives and takes its seat within you. It does not announce itself. It simply says, "I'm ready." Not because every doubt disappeared, but because something deeper finally understood that the pain of postponing the work has become heavier than the discomfort of beginning. That is often the only readiness purpose has ever required. The people who step into their work are rarely the ones who feel completely prepared. They are the ones who reach a moment where staying the same costs more than moving forward. When you look honestly at your life, you may begin to see that the experiences you once questioned were quietly depositing the qualities your future would need. The lessons have entered your bones now. The formation is no longer theoretical. It has become part of who you are. But there is another layer to this story, a layer that surprises many people. Researchers spent years studying not the calling itself, but the vessel that carries it, the mind. What they discovered challenged assumptions many people have carried for years. Purpose is rarely the problem. The deeper issue is often the instrument meant to carry it. Not because a person lacks faith or commitment, not because they have failed spiritually. Something else has been happening beneath awareness, quietly shaping the way the mind functions. Something measurable, something physical, something that can be understood. So hold this question for a moment. What if the thing standing between you and the work is not only spiritual readiness? What if part of the answer has been living inside the architecture of the mind all along? Because the greatest obstacle to meaningful work rarely arrives looking like an enemy. It comes disguised as good things, responsibilities, obligations, urgent situations, people you genuinely care about. For those who carry deep purpose, this becomes especially difficult because their compassion often becomes the mechanism of their delay. They feel the needs of others so clearly that they move toward them before asking whether those needs actually belong to them. Years can disappear this way, not through laziness or neglect, but through goodness, through busyness that looks meaningful from the outside while quietly creating an ache on the inside. You know that feeling, the sense that something important keeps getting postponed, the awareness that beneath every responsibility completed and every person helped, there is still a conversation waiting between you and the work that has never stopped calling your name. And perhaps this is what you need to hear right now. You are allowed to focus. Not because love matters less or service matters less. You are allowed to focus because a vessel cannot pour what it has never been given the chance to fill. The deepest part of you is filled when it finally begins honoring the thing it was created to carry. A vessel becomes full when it carries what it was created to carry. Not every worthy cause, request, or opportunity belongs to you. What restores you is often the specific work placed in your hands. There is a difference between doing good in the world and offering the one thing only you can give. Many people can do good, but only you can do yours. Those who fulfill their calling rarely depend on complicated systems. Instead, they return each day to what matters most, and that return begins with a question. Before the noise of the day arrives, ask yourself, what is the one thing I can do today that moves the unfinished work forward? Not the most urgent task or the thing someone else is waiting on. The one step that quietly says, I have not forgotten what I was given. Even if that step is small, it matters. Small acts repeated faithfully change the direction of a life. That action becomes a declaration through attention. It says, this belongs near the center of my life. Then you listen. Not for a sign from the sky or permission from someone else, but for the part of you that already knows. The truth you carried long before your mind learned to argue with it is still there, waiting beneath the noise. When everything becomes quiet enough, it speaks. Not through drama, but through a calm certainty that feels familiar, as though it has been waiting beneath the surface for years. And once you hear it, you protect it. You stop giving that work whatever scraps remain after everything else takes its share. You give it your clearest hour and strongest attention. Something shifts when your best energy is invested in what matters most, instead of whatever shouts the loudest. This is not really about productivity. It is about faithfulness. It is about honoring the thing that keeps returning to your heart. Over time, it stops feeling like discipline and starts feeling like relief. It feels like coming home. A quiet peace arrives when your effort and purpose finally move in the same direction. Yet there is another layer beneath all of this. Not a spiritual layer, but a physical one hidden within the architecture of the mind. Clarity is not only about inspiration, it is also about whether the mind can sustain what the soul already knows. Remember this, the unfinished feeling is not proof of failure. The delays, struggles, and wilderness seasons were not meaningless. Often they were the result of a deep person giving their energy away everywhere except where it was most needed. The good news is that this can begin changing today. One question, one step, and one protected hour can start shifting the direction of a life. There was a woman in California who described her life in 4 words. Life was happening to me. She spent her days caring for others and returned home doing the same. Yet beneath it all, she carried a quiet fog she could not explain. She still showed up, but she no longer felt like herself. The sharpness she once carried seemed further away each year, and even her marriage reflected that distance. Like many people, she searched everywhere for answers, but nothing seemed to reach the root of the problem. The discovery that eventually helped her began decades earlier. In 1981, neuroscientist Dr. Roger Sperry received a Nobel Prize for research on the brain's 2 hemispheres. Most people know they exist, but few understand what happens when they stop working together efficiently. Modern life places enormous demands on attention. Over time, many people lose access to the natural integration they carried as children. The result is subtle: less clarity, less creativity, and less connection to intuition and flow. The mind still works, but often below its design. Because the shift happens gradually, most people assume it is normal. Yet when the brain begins operating as a whole again, something remarkable returns. Insight returns. Clarity returns. The effortless connection many children experience begins to reappear. Researchers found that while creative genius is common in childhood, very few adults retain that same integrated way of thinking. What happened was not aging or a lack of intelligence. It was a gradual separation unfolding so slowly that most people never noticed it. That realization led researchers to ask an important question: can the disconnect be reversed? A team led by neurologist Dr. Daniel Boren spent years exploring that possibility. Their goal was to make the science practical. What emerged was an 8-minute auditory sequence designed to support whole brain synchronization. The nurse decided to try it. Within days, the fog she had carried for years began lifting. The shift was subtle but noticeable enough that her husband saw it before she could explain it. The distance in their marriage began softening. 2 weeks later, they were traveling together. When she described the change, she said, "My life feels enchanted again." Her circumstances had not suddenly become perfect. Life remained life. What changed was the instrument carrying her through it. Some people hear information like this and move on, because familiar struggles often feel safer than unfamiliar possibilities. But you are still here. Maybe part of you is still asking why the vision feels clear in certain moments, yet difficult to sustain. That question is not impatience, it is discernment. It is the recognition that purpose deserves a vessel capable of carrying it. Whether you explore that technology or not, remember this: you were never meant to live in the endless middle, where meaningful work is postponed while your best energy is spent on everything except the thing your soul keeps returning to. Many people remain there for years because it disguises itself as responsibility, duty, and being needed. Yet when life grows quiet enough, you can feel the difference between the weight of what you chose and the weight of what chose you. The weight of what chose you does not feel like obligation. It feels like recognition, like returning to something familiar beneath years of noise and delay. There is a kind of knowing that does not need approval. It simply says, "This is mine." Not from ego, but from truth. Perhaps that season of postponing is ending. You are beginning to understand that protecting your purpose is not selfish, it is honest. Faithfulness is not giving everything to everyone. Faithfulness is giving yourself fully to what you were entrusted with. The work remains and no one else can carry it for you. Readiness was never the absence of uncertainty. It was always the decision to move while uncertainty still exists. The people who fulfill their calling rarely feel completely prepared. They simply reach a moment when postponing becomes more painful than beginning. And remember, the work was never only about you. There are people connected to your completion, people whose lives may shift because you finished the thing you keep returning to instead of leaving it unfinished. Think about Moses. Most people focus on the miracle and overlook the moment before it. The sea had not opened, the army was approaching, and everyone around him was measuring the odds. Moses did something different. He stopped looking at circumstances and returned to his assignment. He remembered what 40 years of wilderness had prepared him to carry and chose to move. When his calling was first spoken aloud, he argued, he questioned, he explained why someone else would be better suited. Maybe your argument sounds different, but perhaps you have made one too. I need more time. Maybe later. Someone else could do this better. Yet the answer Moses received was simple. I know what I am asking of you, and I am asking you. Purpose is rarely confirmed through the disappearance of doubt. It is confirmed through movement in the presence of doubt. Moses stopped negotiating, and the sea opened after the step, not before. That pattern still appears throughout life. Clarity follows movement. Confidence follows movement. Evidence often follows movement. Perhaps that is exactly where you stand now. Not at a dramatic crossroads, but at a quiet threshold. A truth you keep revisiting, a door you keep walking past, a conversation inside yourself that has been waiting to end. In the Hebrew tradition, the craftsmen who built the tabernacle were each given a melacha, a specific work entrusted to a specific person. Not general labor, but a precise contribution that belonged uniquely to them. Each person honored their portion with care and devotion. Because every piece was completed, the whole became complete. A place was created where the divine could dwell. The world is not waiting for you to do everything. It is waiting for you to do your piece. The one marked by your fingerprints, shaped by your story, and quietly calling your name all along. And when every piece finally came together, something extraordinary emerged. Not because one person carried the entire vision, but because each person completed the part that belonged to them. Together, those pieces became something far greater than any individual could have built alone. A place prepared for presence, a place that had been waiting. That is why your melacha matters. It is more than a desire to do something meaningful. It is the specific expression of purpose your life has been shaping through every season, every loss, every gift, every failure, and every lesson experience taught you. All of it belongs to the work. No one else carries your exact history, your wilderness, or the understanding your journey has given you. Because of that, no one else can fully occupy the space designed for your contribution. That space is not waiting for perfection, it is waiting for participation. There will always be voices telling you the work can wait. Some will sound wise, pointing toward responsibilities and urgent demands. Yet urgency and importance are not the same thing, and many people spend years answering what is urgent while neglecting what is essential. You know the feeling. A productive day ends, yet the one thing that mattered most never received your attention. The work does not disappear. It waits quietly, returning whenever life becomes still enough for you to hear it again. So hear this clearly. An unfinished assignment is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of something still unfolding, a promise still in motion. But promises require movement, not someday, but now, in whatever form today allows. Most people think transformation begins with a dramatic act. More often, it begins with something small. A page written, a call made, a conversation started, or an hour protected from distraction. The sea still parts after the step is taken, not before. There is a freedom waiting on the other side of that step. Not freedom from challenge, but freedom from living divided against yourself. It arrives when the life you are living finally begins to align with the life you know you were meant to live. That freedom begins when the negotiation ends. The moment you stop asking whether the work deserves your commitment and simply give it your commitment. Because certainty rarely comes first. Action comes first, and certainty grows inside it. If you have spent years pouring yourself into everything except the thing that keeps returning to your heart, listen carefully. You have not missed your moment. The invitation is still here, the door is still open, and the conversation is still waiting. Maybe what you call procrastination is something deeper. Maybe part of you knew that saying yes to the work meant saying goodbye to an older version of yourself, the version built around delay, endless preparation, and remaining unfinished. That version brought you this far, but it cannot take you where you are going. Something new is emerging now. The life you are living can no longer contain the person you are becoming. The people who fulfill their calling rarely look different in the beginning. They simply stop negotiating, stop waiting for perfect conditions, and begin. Think of the craftsmen in the wilderness. Each carried their own melacha, their unique part of the work. No one was asked to do it all, only to faithfully fulfill their role. Through their efforts, something sacred emerged. Piece by piece, a vision became reality and became a dwelling place for presence. Your work carries that same quality. There is a place in this world shaped for what you carry, your voice, experiences, and the wisdom life has given you. It holds something no one else can fully provide. Your wounds were never meant to stay wounds. Over time, they became wisdom, understanding, and language. They became the very words someone else may need when facing a season you already survived. That is why what you carry matters. There are things you understand because of the road you walked. There are people who will recognize themselves in your story because they have lived parts of it too. A story comes to mind. One man knew from childhood that he was meant to write. Over 7 years, he started the same project 9 times, only to stop whenever it demanded the deepest part of him. He was not lazy. He studied, prepared, and kept returning. Yet he remained at the beginning because it felt familiar, and part of him had learned to survive by staying unfinished. Then something changed. The mental interference he carried for years began to lift. The book that resisted him for 7 years came together in just 6 weeks. Later he said, "I finally stopped feeling like the wrong person for the work I was given." Maybe you need to hear that too. You are not the wrong person for what keeps calling your name. Every delay, every closed door, and every season that made you question yourself was adding something to you. None of it was disqualifying you, it was preparing you. The challenge is that growth rarely looks like growth while it is happening. In the wilderness, preparation feels like confusion. In the waiting, formation feels like delay. What is being asked of you now is not blind certainty. You only need to move forward long enough for the movement itself to reveal what has been true all along. Sometimes the step creates the clarity. Pause for a moment and let this settle. You were given something specific to carry. It was never meant for anyone else. You are done postponing what you already know you must do. Choose to begin, protect the time it requires, and return whenever distraction pulls you away. Trust that what this work needs has already been planted within you. The years were sufficient. The preparation was sufficient. The work is not waiting for you to become someone else. It is waiting for you to trust who you have become. If something in this message touched you, name it. One word, one honest phrase. The moment something is named, it begins to take shape. Perhaps someone in your life needs this message too. Share it with them as an act of recognition. If these words speak to something real inside you, stay close. What you have been waiting for may be closer than you think. One day, you will look back on this moment with gratitude, not because you had all the answers, but because you finally trusted what your soul already knew. Honor it. Begin.